share the would you be able to share the agenda because it has the presentation on it?
Sure. And I'll share my screen. Share screen. There we go. And you'll need to prompt me, Georgiana, on when you want me to move it along. So,
so this is the 8 ways of learning, which we use across New South Wales and I think even across other states to kind of make any kind of education that we're delivering sensitive to Aboriginal ways of learning, which can be already what we're doing, but it's good to be aware of it and to also think of alternative ways of presenting training. So if you scroll down, so it's my passion as an educator. It's centered on how First Nation peoples learn rather than what you teach, and stepping away from things like Dreamtime stories and thinking more about how you do things. It's helpful because we all work on lots of different First Nation lands, so you don't have to, it can be taught anywhere across Australia and on the Torres Strait Islands. Those images that you saw before just show that all the different ways you can present things to trainees are connected. So they're not standing on their own. And the connections are not accidental. They speak to First Nations cultural ways of thinking. So it's relational, and we can use it as trainers to provide trainees with multiple ways to engage. We're not reinventing the wheel, just becoming aware of how we align with First Nation thinking, First Nations cultures. I think story sharing works really well for our avian training because we can provide a scenario to a trainee, which is a story, and ask them to apply their knowledge or what they've watched and participated in training, which is non-linear. So they're applying things not in a straightforward way. They might be picking things that they've heard throughout the training or through their experiences. The learning map could be linked to husbandry plans. So we kind of use that to keep referring to it, to keep bouncing off how we structure husbandry. And then we ask them to share their stories again about when have you used a husbandry plan, or what section of the husbandry plan would you like to keep working on and learning more about, things like that. I think we sometimes get pressed for time when asking trainees to share their stories. It can sometimes take a long time. So it's a good way is to encourage group work so they can share their stories as a group and then pick one person to present the synopsis and give them a time limit. We've got 2 minutes, and then it's okay to say, well, your 2 minutes is up. Thank you so much for your contribution. Non-verbal learning is linked to community learning maps and land links. It's really a lot about drawing back to the country you're on and what their needs are in that area, what kinds of birds they have there, and keep drawing it back to their experience of country and place. That's a very Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander First Nations approach. How can we encourage trainees to also engage with the wider community in a non-verbal way? So there's a lot of information about birds that we can share in local areas that might be helpful, where we don't have to be on social media or talk to people directly to educate. So it's good to bring that in. And I think one of the great things is we expect a lot of people to be really savvy with writing, but then not all people are, including adults. And so it's really good to allow people to draw what they know, which might speak to what you were talking about, Deb, with allowing other ways of talking about enclosures and chick care, that you don't always have to be bringing objects in, you could be drawing things, there are different approaches, and it's good to be a bit flexible about how people can contribute, or it doesn't always have to be written. That can be a bit disconcerting, particularly for First Nations people, but I think everyone appreciates choices in how they present their information. I think one of the things that is really great when you're a presenter or training people to know is that a lot of what we teach is non-verbal, and some people are more receptive to non-verbal training. So for instance, when you're demonstrating hydration, rather than talk the whole way through it, you could say what you're about to do and then don't speak at all and just do it, and then ask them to just do it. So that there's that they're watching your body language, they're watching how you move, because when you speak and move at the same time, like I'm doing now, you don't know what to focus on. Am I watching this or am I listening to that? And so it's good to kind of think about that when you're presenting, how you allow opportunities for non-verbal learning. Yeah. And I think one of the deconstruct, reconstruct symbol in that, if you go back up to the image of the model of the 8 ways of learning, if you look at deconstruct and reconstruct, we do a lot of that as trainers. So we say we're going to learn how to do gavage hydration. We deconstruct it into steps, and then we reconstruct it when we model it, how fast all those steps are put together so that you're limiting the stress on the bird, for example. And then that's also linked to non-verbal learning. So I guess we're not reinventing the wheel here. It's just being aware of how these aspects of Aboriginal pedagogies, I guess, or ways of teaching can help us and put a little bit of thought into allowing our trainees to have multiple ways to access the knowledge that we're trying to share. And I really love it. I mean, it works with adults, it works with children. Sometimes you'll be explaining something and you watch them do it, like you see them have a practice, and it's like they haven't heard anything that you've demonstrated, and you could fall back on this 8 ways and think, maybe I need to do some non-verbal demonstration in front of them. So just have a look at me do it and do it again in front of them without any words. Or I deconstruct it. I see you've got this part, but this little section here needs a bit of work. Do you want to watch me just do that part? And so you are deconstructing and reconstructing for them as you go. So, and with that understanding that they may be more of a non-verbal learner, or they may need to draw it or see a diagram. You can sort of say, maybe we should look at the manual, and this is the page that's on. Why don't you have a look at that and try again? So I find it really useful. I hope you do. And as we go down the track, we can add these symbols to the actual manual, and that shows a great deal of respect to First Nations people, that you're acknowledging you're using different ways to access the training knowledge. It's not just one way transmission, write it all down. So there's multiple access points. So yeah. And I like that it's community centered, and bringing that back to the people and where they are on country. That's a really good thing to keep in mind, of where you are in New South Wales training these people and what their needs are. It's really good to bring that back to them, which is all that story sharing and non-linear learning we get a lot of in training, right? We might go off track, but that can be very useful. So it's okay to go a little bit off track and discuss their needs and worries. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's great. I particularly like that thing about stop talking and demonstrate, because it makes me think when I'm demonstrating crop hydration, I just talk all the way through the demonstration. So thank you, Georgie. That's a really
Yeah, it's good to sometimes give an instruction, keep it simple, and then demonstrate.
Yeah.
Get them to have a go, then go to the next. Yeah. Breaks it up a little bit more, deconstructs it a little bit more.
All right, I am trying to work out how to stop the recording. stop share because we don't want to share the whole recording. I'll stop sharing and then I will